I don't even know where to start, but I guess the beginning is as good a place as any. My name is Mike, and I'm just a regular guy in my mid-30s. I've been married to Jenna for about 8 years now. We started out like any couple, young love, a cozy apartment, all that good stuff. Things were pretty great until they were. The signs started showing up like a bad rash, but I ignored them, thinking it was just the usual ups and downs of marriage. Jenna, she was always a bit of a firecracker, passionate, bold, and sometimes a bit too much for my laid-back personality. But lately, there were changes in her demeanor that I couldn't quite ignore anymore. She started going out more often, hanging out with friends I had never heard of. She would come home late, smelling of cheap perfume that wasn't hers, and whenever I asked about her night, her responses were vague at best. Instead of being honest, she'd get defensive, her tone sharp like a knife, which only made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I brushed off my gut instincts, thinking I was just being paranoid. After all, we were in our 30s now, maybe this was just a phase, right? But then, one evening while I was cleaning up the house, I noticed something strange. There was a pair of men's shoes by the front door. They weren't mine. Immediately, my heart started racing and a cold sweat broke out across my back. I checked with Jenna and she claimed they were just a friend's shoes. A friend? Who was this mystery man? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every little detail in my mind. I had noticed her spending more time with the home security guy, Dave. He was younger, fit, and whenever he'd come over to check on things, there was this energy between them that I could sense. I pushed those thoughts aside too, thinking I was reading into things. But that night, I decided to do some digging. I went through her phone while she was in the shower. I hate to admit it, but I felt like a total sleazebag. But I had to know. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then I found it, a string of messages between Jenna and Dave. The flirty banter turned explicit quickly, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They were planning to meet up, talking about how much fun they had together, how she wanted to feel alive again. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, rage boiling up from the pit of my stomach. When she came out, I confronted her. I couldn't hold back the hurt and anger. "Jenna, who the hell is Dave?" I yelled, trying to keep my voice steady but failing miserably. She froze, her eyes widening as if she had seen a ghost. I threw her phone on the bed, the evidence glaring back at us. She stammered, trying to come up with excuses that fell flat. "It's not what you think, he's just a friend." But I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew she was caught. Her excuses were pathetic. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to weave a web of lies, each one more absurd than the last. I wasn't buying it. The betrayal cut deep, and the pain was too raw to ignore. I never thought I'd be the guy who would have to deal with a cheating spouse, but here I was. I felt like my whole world had just come crashing down, and I had no idea what to do next. That moment was the start of a dark path I never planned to walk down, one filled with intrigue and revenge that would change everything. I was done being the nice guy. I needed to make her feel what I felt, betrayed, scared, and utterly helpless. The thought of it fueled me. My decision was made, and I was ready to execute my plan. After that explosive confrontation with Jenna, I managed to get through the night, but sleep evaded me like an old friend who had turned their back on me. My mind was racing. I was flooded with a mix of emotions: anger, grief, betrayal, and an overwhelming urge for retribution. I had to do something, but what? I didn't want to be reckless. I needed a plan. I needed to hit back in a way that would make her understand the depth of her betrayal. I spent days mulling over my options. I didn't want to just expose Dave. I wanted to ensure Jenna felt the repercussions of her actions every waking hour. For now, I determined to bide my time, gathering evidence and formulating a strategy. I started by installing a few hidden cameras around our home, making sure to keep a close eye not only on her, but also on the interactions she had with Dave. It was a sickening feeling, watching the woman I once loved turn into someone unrecognizable, but I had to know just how deep this affair ran. Days turned into weeks, and I watched as Jenna continued her charade. She was careful, but I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She became overly cautious, almost paranoid. It was as if she sensed I was onto something, yet she had no idea just how much I knew. Each time she received a text from Dave, I felt a spark of anger ignite within me, but I also felt a strange thrill knowing I was one step ahead. It wasn't long before I started to piece together a timeline of their encounters. I was meticulous, documenting every little detail. I learned about their meetings, the places they frequented, and the lies she spun to cover her tracks. But the best part was yet to come. I discovered that Jenna had planned a weekend getaway with him under the guise of a girls' trip with her friends. That was my golden opportunity, a chance to expose her and let the world see what she had become. On the day of her trip, I pretended to support her. I helped her pack her bags, even smiled as she blabbed about all the fun she was going to have. Little did she know I had other plans. I made arrangements to ensure I'd have access to her phone while she was away. I set up a call with a friend who worked in the local tech shop, asking him to help me access her social media accounts. I wanted to ensure that I could craft a story that would unravel the carefully woven fabric of her lies. As Jenna left, I felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with anxiety. I was playing a dangerous game, but I was committed to making her feel the weight of her decisions. Late that night, after she had checked into her hotel room with Dave, I sent a message from her main social media account. I crafted a post that hinted at a new relationship, laced with vague mentions of feeling so much happier now. I wanted to make them feel watched, to instill a sense of paranoia that would haunt her every moment. Then, I waited. I had set the stage for the drama to unfold. I imagined Jenna's shock when she saw the post, a realization dawning on her that the charade was crumbling. I wanted her to feel that betrayal from both ends, to understand how it felt to be deceived. The next morning I watched as she checked her phone, her face falling as she read the comments from friends who had seen the post. "Who's this new guy? And I thought you were with us this weekend," flooded in. My heart raced at the thought of her confusion and fear. The anticipation was electric, but it was only the beginning. The next part of my plan involved Dave. I didn't just want Jenna to feel unsafe. I wanted to expose him as well. I reached out to an old friend who was a private investigator, explaining the situation and asking him to look into Dave's background. I wanted to gather anything I could that would tarnish his reputation, not just in Jenna's eyes, but in the eyes of anyone who mattered, including his employers. I discovered that he had a history of questionable behavior and a few unsavory encounters, perfect for a little exposure. I set everything in motion, feeling like a puppeteer pulling strings. I knew I was crossing lines and digging deeper into a dark territory, but the sweet taste of revenge was intoxicating. I was at war now, and I was ready to fight, determined to ensure Jenna never forgot what she did to me. This was just the prelude to my final act. The stage was set, and I was preparing for the grand reveal, one that would shake the very foundation of our lives. I was about to show her that she had not just betrayed me, but had also awakened a darker side of myself that I never knew existed. With my plan in full swing, I could hardly contain my excitement. I felt like I was on the verge of something monumental, and the best part, I was finally regaining a sense of control over my life. For so long, I had felt like a victim, but now I was the one calling the shots. The days blurred together as I waited for the right moment to execute the next phase of my revenge. As Jenna enjoyed her so-called getaway, I kept a close eye on her social media. I wanted to be privy to everything that was happening in real time. Each post and each comment seemed to fuel my motivation further. I could see her trying to keep her cool, but I could also sense the anxiety bubbling underneath the surface. It was deliciously satisfying to know I had orchestrated the chaos in her life, even if she didn't fully realize it yet. After a couple of days, I received the results from the background check on Dave. My investigator friend had pulled up a few juicy tidbits that I could use to further undermine him. He had some minor legal issues, nothing that would land him in prison, but enough to make him look unreliable and sketchy. I had decided to use this information to my advantage, and I was ready to unleash it. I knew Jenna would be coming back soon, and I wanted to make sure that the moment she returned, she would be hit by a barrage of revelations. I printed out the background check and made a big show of casually leaving it on the kitchen counter where she couldn't miss it. I imagined her confusion as she walked in, her mind still buzzing from her escapade, only to confront the stark reality of Dave's true nature. It was a calculated move, but I knew she needed to see the facts laid out before her. The day she returned home, I played it cool. I greeted her with a smile, hugging her as if nothing was amiss, even though my heart was racing. I wanted to watch her squirm. As she walked into the kitchen, her eyes landed on the papers on the counter. I could feel the tension in the air as she picked them up, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. "Mike, what is this?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave, laced with a mix of anger and fear. "Oh, just some information I came across about your friend Dave," I said, keeping my expression neutral, leaning against the counter like I was just casually sharing a news article. "I thought you should know who you're dealing with." Her reaction was immediate, the color drained from her face as she scanned the papers. "This isn't what you think. He's not like that. You're just trying to ruin everything," she stammered, her voice rising in pitch. I shrugged, letting the silence linger as I absorbed the sight of her unraveling. "You mean to tell me that a guy with a history of questionable behavior is someone you'd want to be involved with? Seems like a terrible choice, wouldn't you agree?" Her anger flared and she lashed out. "You have no right to judge. You've been so distant. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to seek comfort elsewhere." Her words cut deep, but I had long since hardened my heart to her manipulation. "Comfort? Is that what you call it? Cheating on your husband with a security guy? I can't even begin to understand how you thought this could end well." Jenna tried to defend herself, but her excuses were empty. I watched as she struggled to justify her actions, but the truth was evident. She had betrayed me, and now she was facing the consequences of her choices. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching her squirm, knowing I had orchestrated this moment. But I wasn't done yet. The real kicker was still to come. I had contacted some of her close friends while she was away, subtly dropping hints about the affair and the information I had gathered about Dave. I didn't directly accuse her. I simply let them know enough to seed doubt. I wanted to ensure the news spread like wildfire to make her feel exposed and vulnerable. That weekend, I watched as Jenna received calls and messages from her friends, their voices thick with concern. They had questions, and they were beginning to turn on her. The realization that her lies were no longer confined to just me was evident in her eyes. She was losing her grip on her social circle, and it was delicious to witness. I kept my cool, pretending to offer support while secretly enjoying her downfall. I wanted her to feel completely isolated, like she was being watched from every corner. I reveled in the paranoia that settled over her like a dark cloud. It was my antidote to the pain she had inflicted upon me. I wanted her to face the reality of her choices, to understand that trust, once broken, could never be fully mended. As the days passed, I saw the toll my actions were taking on her. She was anxious, constantly checking her phone, her eyes darting around as if she were afraid of who might call or show up next. I could see the cracks in the facade she had built to protect herself. The excitement I initially felt was now intermingled with a sense of uncertainty. I had set into motion a chain of events that would only lead to a larger confrontation, one that would ultimately change everything. I was in too deep to back out now, and part of me wanted to keep pushing to see just how far I could take this. I was a man on a mission, determined to show her the depths of her betrayal and to ensure she never felt safe again, one way or another. As the chaos unfurled, the tension in our home thickened like a fog that refused to lift. Jenna was on edge, and I became acutely aware of how my every action, my every word, was laced with unspoken tension. I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the thrill of my revenge and the reality of the life I was destroying. There were moments when I'd catch her glancing at me, her expression a mix of confusion and fear. I could almost see the wheels turning in her mind as she tried to figure out how I had become so sinister, so vengeful. Days turned into weeks, and Jenna's paranoia deepened. She became erratic, suddenly oversharing her whereabouts, almost to the point of absurdity. "I'm just going to the grocery store in case you're wondering," she'd say, her voice tinged with defensiveness. It was almost comical to watch her try to regain control over her life, but every time she mentioned Dave, I could see her resolve faltering. The weight of her betrayal was suffocating her, and I was relishing every minute of it. One evening, I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she stared at her phone. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her anxiety. I could tell she was planning some sort of confrontation, perhaps a last-ditch effort to salvage what was left of our marriage. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I replied casually, taking a seat opposite her. I wanted to see how this would play out. I wanted to watch her squirm. "I've been thinking about what happened," she began, her voice faltering slightly. "I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I want to make things right." Her eyes pleaded with me, but all I felt was a cold detachment. "Make things right?" I echoed, leaning back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You mean by continuing to lie, because that's all I've seen from you lately." I watched her face fall, the desperation in her eyes flaring up. "Please, Mike, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you," she implored, her voice cracking. "I thought I was lost and Dave was he was just someone I could talk to." "Someone you could talk to?" I scoffed. "You mean someone you could sleep with? Don't try to sugarcoat this, Jenna. You made your choices." "Stop bringing him up. It was a mistake," she shouted, her frustration boiling over. "You're acting like you're perfect, but you've been so distant." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I had been distant, but only because I felt the emotional chasm growing between us. I felt trapped, pushed away by her actions and the lies she had spun. I was distant because I was trying to understand what was happening to us. I countered, my voice low and controlled. "But it wasn't my choice to betray this relationship. That was all you." She sat back, her eyes welling with tears. "I'm willing to do anything to fix this. I'll end things with Dave. I'll even go to marriage counseling. Just please, Mike, don't give up on us." Those words hung in the air, and for a moment I almost felt a twinge of sympathy. But then I remembered the nights I spent watching her deceive me, the anguish of betrayal that would stay with me forever. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," I said, my voice steady. "Trust is shattered, Jenna. You can't just put a Band-Aid on this and expect it to heal." Her expression shifted and she leaned forward, desperation etched in her face. "What do you want from me? How can I prove myself?" I considered her words. Part of me wanted to take the easier road. I could see her wanting to rebuild, and maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. But the darker side of me, the one that had been born out of betrayal, wasn't ready to let go. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her choices. "I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to be scared," I said, my voice low and deliberate. "You need to know that I am not someone you can walk all over." I watched as the realization crossed her face, the fear settling in. "What are you saying?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm saying I'm going to make sure you never forget this. I'm going to expose everything. I'll tell your friends, your family, everyone. I want them to see you for who you really are." Her eyes widened, and I could see her mind racing, trying to think of a way to negotiate her way out of this. "You wouldn't do that," she said, trying to sound confident but failing. "You're just angry." "Anger has nothing to do with it," I replied, my tone cold and unwavering. "This isn't just about anger, it's about justice. You need to understand the consequences of your actions." She began to cry, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. I was tearing apart the very fabric of our life together, but it was her betrayal that had led me down this path. I wanted her to feel every ounce of hurt she had caused me, but I also wondered if I was becoming the monster in this story. "Please, Mike," she pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of her sobs. "Let's just move on. I'll do anything you want." But it was too late for that. I had made my decision. I was going to show her just how real the consequences could be. I wasn't going to let her off the hook so easily. This was about revenge, about making her feel the same fear and paranoia that had gripped me ever since I found out about her affair. As I watched her crumble before me, I realized that we were far beyond the point of reconciliation. The darkness I had tapped into felt alive, and I wasn't ready to let it go. I was determined to see this through to the end, whatever that might mean for both of us. As days turned into a blur of tension and unease, the atmosphere in our home became suffocating. Jenna was a shell of her former self, constantly on edge as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had made it clear that I wasn't going to back down. The facade of our marriage was crumbling, and with it came the realization that I had unleashed a darkness within myself that I didn't know existed. I had decided it was time to put my plans into action. I wanted to make sure Jenna felt the full weight of her betrayal, and that meant involving more than just her. I had already dropped hints to her friends about Dave and our troubled marriage, but now I needed to take it a step further. I wanted everyone to know what she had done and how she had tried to manipulate me. I wanted her to feel isolated, to understand that the consequences of her actions extended beyond just us. One evening, when I knew Jenna would be out running errands, I took the opportunity to contact a few of her closest friends. I crafted messages that shared my side of the story, how I had discovered her affair, the evidence I had, and the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. I didn't hold back. I wanted them to see Jenna not as the innocent victim she had tried to portray, but as the woman who had torn apart our marriage with her deceit. When Jenna returned home, the tension was palpable. I could tell she sensed something was off. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, and I watched her face fall as she scrolled through the messages. I knew that my messages had landed, and I was hungry for the fallout. The panic in her eyes was intoxicating. It was precisely the reaction I had been craving since I uncovered her betrayal. "Mike, what did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling. The realization was dawning on her, and I felt a surge of satisfaction as I leaned back against the couch, arms crossed, wearing a calm exterior. That contrasted with the storm brewing inside her. "I didn't do anything, Jenna. You did this to yourself," I replied, my tone even. "I just wanted to make sure your friends knew the truth." Her hands shook as she held her phone, and I could see the gears turning in her mind, desperately trying to think of a way to salvage the situation. "This isn't fair. You can't just ruin my life like this. You're being vindictive." "Vindictive?" I echoed, my voice low and steady. "You're the one who chose to betray me. You're the one who decided to throw away everything we built together for a fling with the security guy. I'm just making sure everyone knows what a liar you are." Jenna's eyes filled with tears, and I could see her breaking down before me. "Please, Mike, I'll do anything to fix this. You don't understand how sorry I am. I made a terrible mistake." "Sorry isn't enough," I snapped, my anger bubbling over. "You've had your fun, and now it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. I hope you understand that everyone you care about knows the truth now, and they'll see you for who you really are." I could see the realization washing over her as she processed the gravity of the situation. Her friends had rallied around her in concern, but now she would be forced to confront the betrayal head-on. I wanted her to feel the isolation and shame that came from losing the support of those closest to her. I wanted her to understand that she was alone in this, just as I felt left alone to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. The next few days were a whirlwind of confrontation and chaos. Jenna's friends began reaching out to her, trying to understand what had happened and why she had lied. She was forced to explain herself over and over again, her excuses sounding more hollow with each retelling. I watched her struggle as she tried to maintain her composure, but the cracks were beginning to show. The pressure of her choices was bearing down on her, and I could feel a twisted sense of satisfaction in knowing I was the catalyst for her unraveling. But as much as I was enjoying her downfall, I also felt a gnawing sense of guilt creeping in. I had unleashed a monster, and I was beginning to wonder if I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Watching her suffer would never bring me back to the place I wanted to be, the place where trust and love existed. I had allowed my desire for revenge to consume me, and I was starting to worry about the consequences of my actions. One night, as we sat in silence, I noticed her staring blankly at the wall, lost in her thoughts. The weight of our situation hung heavy in the air. I finally broke the silence. "Jenna, do you even understand why this happened?" Her eyes flicked toward me, filled with anguish. "I made a mistake, Mike. I was looking for something I thought I lost in myself. I didn't realize how much I could hurt you." That's the problem, isn't it? I replied, my voice firm. You didn't think about how your actions would impact us. You only thought about yourself. Jenna's shoulders slumped as she faced the truth. I didn't know how to talk to you. I thought I could find that connection elsewhere. I see. Now how foolish that was. And for the first time, something shifted in me. I saw the pain in her eyes, and deep down, I knew that revenge wouldn't heal my own wounds. It wouldn't bring back the trust we had lost, nor would it fill the empty space in my heart. It was a bitter realization, but it was also a moment of clarity. I had been blinded by anger, seeking to punish her without considering the long-term consequences for myself. Still, the darkness lingered. I had set this course into motion, and I couldn't just walk away. The damage had been done, and it wasn't enough to simply confront her. I needed to ensure she understood the depth of her betrayal. I was conflicted, but I couldn't back down now. The game was still on, and I had to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. No matter what I decided next, I knew this moment would mark a turning point in both of our lives, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But I had one more move left in me, and I was determined to make my final act one. She would never forget. In the aftermath of that heavy conversation, I felt a storm brewing within me. The thrill of revenge had been intoxicating, but now the taste was turning bitter. I was torn between wanting to expose Jenna further and the nagging feeling that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I knew I had to make one final move, but I wanted it to be impactful enough to drive my point home without completely obliterating the remnants of my own humanity. The next day, I decided to take a day off work. I needed space to think. With Jenna at home, still trying to salvage her image with her friends, I could sense a shift in her demeanor. She was trying to put on a brave face, but the anxiety was palpable. I took advantage of the opportunity to execute my final act of revenge, one that would leave her with a lasting impression of what had happened between us. I gathered all the evidence I had collected over the past weeks, the text messages, the history of their meetings, the background check on Dave, and meticulously compiled them into a file. I was going to send this to her. Family and friends, not to destroy her entirely, but to ensure they understood the truth. I wanted them to see the woman who had betrayed her husband, who had sought solace in another man instead of fighting for her marriage. I wanted them to witness how far she had strayed from the woman they thought they knew. As I prepared the email, I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wanted to back out, to abandon this idea altogether, but the darker side of me pushed forward. I hit send and watched as the email vanished into the digital ether. I had done it. There was no going back now. I leaned back in my chair, feeling an odd mix of satisfaction and dread. I was about to ignite a fire that I could no longer control. Later that evening, Jenna was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. I could see the shift in her expression as the notifications rolled in. Her friends and family were reaching out, their messages filled with concern and confusion. For a moment, I thought about how this would impact her. Would she finally realize the consequences of her betrayal? Would she understand the pain she had caused? "Mike, what did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief as she confronted me in the kitchen. "What did you send them?" I looked at her, trying to suppress a smirk. "Just a little truth-telling," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Thought they should know how you've been spending your time." "Do you have any idea how this will affect me?" she shouted, her frustration boiling over. "You're destroying my life." I shrugged, crossing my arms. "You did that when you decided to cheat on me. This is just the fallout of your choices, Jenna. You can't pretend it doesn't matter anymore." Her expression was a mix of anger and despair. "I can't believe you would do this to me. I was trying to fix things." "Fix things?" I echoed, my voice rising in intensity. "You had your chance to fix things, and you chose to run into the arms of another man instead. I wanted you to feel the gravity of your decisions, and now you do." The conversation spiraled, and I felt a sense of satisfaction seeing her panicking and realizing the storm I had unleashed. But as the minutes ticked by, I also felt a pang of guilt creeping in. I was watching her unravel before my eyes, and I had orchestrated this entire scene. I had become the very monster I had set out to expose. Jenna's phone buzzed incessantly, and I could see her trying to respond to her friends, attempting to explain herself to justify her actions. But the truth was out, and there was no way to spin it anymore. I had stripped away her defenses, leaving her vulnerable. Eventually, she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Mike, please, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but this isn't going to help either of us. You're just pushing me away more." I hesitated, my heart wavering. The pain in her eyes was genuine, and despite everything that had happened, a part of me still cared for her. "I just wanted you to understand what you've done," I said, my voice softening slightly. "And I do. I understand that I've messed up, but your revenge isn't going to heal our marriage. It's only going to destroy us." Her words hit me like a freight train. I felt the weight of my actions crashing down on my shoulders, and I realized that this wasn't who I wanted to be. I didn't want to become a bitter, vengeful person because of her betrayal. I wanted to rise above it, to reclaim my life on my own terms. Maybe you're right," I said slowly, feeling the anger begin to dissipate. "This wasn't the way to handle things, but I wanted you to feel the fear that I felt when I discovered your affair." We shared a moment of silence, and I could see the hurt and regret etched into her expression. "I don't want to lose you, Mike. I'm willing to do anything to try and salvage this. I can't change the past, but I want to work on our future." The resolve in her voice made me reconsider everything. Maybe I could give us a chance to rebuild, not because of her betrayal, but despite it. I didn't want to be defined by anger and revenge. I wanted to heal, and perhaps we could find a way to do that together. I took a deep breath. "If we're going to try to move forward, we need to be honest with each other. No more lies, no more secrets." Jenna nodded, her eyes filled with hope. "I promise, Mike. I'll do everything I can to make this right." And for the first time since I discovered her betrayal, I felt a flicker of hope. With the darkness still lingering in the background, I realized that the road ahead would be bumpy, and there was no guarantee we would succeed. But I was willing to try, and maybe that was enough. As we sat down together, the air heavy with unspoken words, I felt a shift in our dynamic. We had a long journey ahead, but perhaps we could find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, and the scars would remain, but we were both committed to the fight. In the end, I understood that the real revenge wasn't about inflicting pain. It was about reclaiming my life and finding a way to heal, together or apart.